Great to have with us former U.S. Attorney, legal analyst, Joe diGenova. Joe, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
You've got Jerry Nadler this weekend, Joe, continuing to push for impeachment. He says that the President of the United States, quote, violated the law 6 ways from Sunday. This looked like a part of Jerry Nadler's efforts to sort of hold on to that theme, despite how abysmal Bob Mueller's testimony was for Democrats last week. What do you think about the push for impeachment? Is it actually subsiding in reality?
Well, I think the crazier Democrats want to do it, and there's nothing that's going to stop them from doing it except the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Jerry Nadler's blathering this weekend is consistent with ignoring the facts. He's creating legal analysis that's a lie, all of this being handed to him by people from the Brookings Institution. They have a group over there called the Lawfare Group, which writes a lot of ridiculous legal crap. And 3 or 4 of their people are now on Nadler's impeachment staff on loan from Brookings. He's mouthing the nostrums that these people write for him. The disastrous testimony of Mueller was an example of how this has been a failing effort from the beginning. This was make no mistake about it, this was an effort to depose the President of the United States by creating a crime and then dethroning him and throwing him out of office. They failed at that because Andrew Weissman didn't get his interview with the President of the United States. Remember, the only thing this investigation was ever about that Mueller was conducting, Weissman really, was they knew there was no Russian collusion from day one. So they used that as a pretext to end up with an interview with the President where they were going to find that he had lied, report that to Congress, and then recommend his impeachment. That didn't happen because the President's lawyers, both paid and unpaid, recommended he should never sit down with Weissman. He didn't. The Weissman's people lost, and then they wrote an ugly, vindictive, unprofessional, unethical report about the President of the United States, which set constitutional law on its head by claiming that they couldn't exonerate the President, thus obliterating the presumption of innocence and due process in the U.S. Constitution. Only Democrats would find that to be just fine.
Yeah, it was a wild thing to watch. This, of course, all of this, and as you know, the media, of course, showing no apology for how it handled all of these things, despite the fact that that team, Mueller's team, Weissman's team, loaded with Hillary donors and lawyers for Hillary aides. I mean, it just makes no sense. And, of course, the impeachment thing is still being pushed. And then you got Nancy Pelosi, who met with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Friday and begging her to back off. But I don't think AOC is going to do it. Do you, Joe?
No. Those 4 maniacs led by Cortez are really on their own thing. This is the net result of radical policies finding their way up through the groundswell in the Democratic Party. Trump has, by virtue of his mere presence and defeating the loved one, Hillary, created a monster. And the monster is those 4 women. Pelosi looks very weak. She's Speaker in name only, make no doubt about it. She's still very powerful. She can make committee assignments. She can do all sorts of things. But the truth is, she's too smart to know how serious, not to know how serious her problem is. They're just a few nuts away from going down the impeachment road. If they go that route, if they do try to impeach the President, they're definitely going to lose the House. They have a very good chance of losing it now as a result of their public posture on many issues.
Yeah.
But if they try to impeach the President and start proceedings, they will definitely lose the House.
Trying to figure out the beginnings of how this all happened, the Russia investigation, has been a real task. And I know there are people who are work on it. You talk a lot about John Durham. But I want to ask you about an announcement this weekend that the President made, which is his Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, is leaving. And he will be replaced by Congressman John Ratcliffe, who was especially tough on Bob Mueller this past week. Does this replacement mean that we will much more quickly be able to get to the bottom of what happened inside of our intelligence community?
Probably not. Dan Coats is gone because he had outlived his usefulness. When he did that famous interview out at in wherever that
Aspen.
place is in Colorado, where he made snitty remarks about the President of the United States and Putin, he was done. That disrespectful performance among friends at the Aspen Institute, it just came into my head, was the end of his job. But here's the truth. The reason Barr was given declassification authority was because Coates was in the way, as was Chris Wray, the FBI director. They were fighting tooth and nail, phony cover-ups allegedly to protect sources and methods, when Chris Wray was simply trying to protect the FBI from just hugely embarrassing details that are going to come out. By the way, the declassification process will start this week. There are going to be documents released, I think, by Wednesday. The Attorney General, as I understand it, is in the process of getting those ready to come out. There are going to be some of the Devin Nunes documents that he requested, and then a series of other releases will come after that. That's because Durham is progressing very, very quickly in his criminal investigation. This is not a review, quote-unquote, of what went on. This is a criminal investigation of senior DOJ and FBI officials from the Obama administration and intelligence community people, including John Brennan. This is a federal grand jury. This is not a review. This is not an IG audit. This is not some Congressional Research Service look at history. This is a criminal investigation of a bunch of people who tried to seditiously overthrow the President of the United States. So the stuff is going to start coming out this week.
Okay, so let me just pause on the details that you're saying here. Wednesday, that means when you say come out, you mean to the public. We'll be able to see documents Wednesday?
My understanding is by Wednesday, yes.
Okay, and then on the issue of Devin Nunes, what were the documents Devin Nunes was seeking? Was this related to unmasking or wiretapping? What?
They were all the things related to. He made several requests by letter, as you know, of various items, 302s, applications for the FISA court. I mean, Devin Nunes has made many, many requests for declassification. I'm not sure which ones are going to come out first, but they're coming now. That's what we've been told.
All right, and now we've been told. Thank you for that. More with Joe diGenova in a moment. I've got a lot more to ask Joe, so we're going to hold him over. All right, we're talking to former U.S. Attorney Joe diGenova. Always great to talk to Joe on a Monday. Joining me this morning, too, is Kelsey Bowler from the Heritage Foundation and Independence Women's Forum. Kelsey, you've got a question for Joe.
Hey, Joe, it's great to have you on this morning. You are a lawyer, also former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. We were just talking about this Nicholas Sandmann case against the Washington Post being dismissed by a federal judge on Friday afternoon. He was suing for $250 million. We wanted to ask you, how much of a setback is this for Sandmann, and does he still have a case against these other news organizations that he is still suing?
The answer to the second question is yes, and the answer to the first question is it's a setback because anytime a federal judge makes you go appeal a case, you're wasting time and money and never getting in front of a jury. Sandmann will get in front of a jury ultimately. The judge in this case is just absolutely wrong on the law. This is a juvenile who was slandered and libeled by the mainstream media all across the country. He wrote some quite silly things in his opinion, like, well, the Post didn't mention his name. But they did show his photographs 40 or 50 times over several days, as if that is anonymity without a name attached to it, while the rest of the world is mentioning his name on all other platforms and devices. It's just wrong on the law. It'll be appealed. He'll win ultimately. He may have to go to the Supreme Court. But as a juvenile, he has a right to sue. He was correct in his lawyers are absolutely correct that he was libeled. So we shall see. It's just going to take a while. This is the nature of our system. It's ugly, it's long, it's expensive, and thank God for lawyers who are willing to take it on.
The judge sounded very dismissive of his case. He said that Sandmann must prove that his case is more than just annoying, offensive, or embarrassing. He said they needed to prove that Sandmann faced public hatred, contempt, and ridicule. How could he conclude he faced anything otherwise?
Well, as I said, this was a juvenile decision by a federal judge, a new federal judge, an Obama federal judge. Justice Roberts, are you listening? There are different types of judges, and their political stripes make all the difference in the world in their political and judicial philosophy. This is a ridiculous decision. The incantations by this judge as to the legal standard are wrong, simply wrong on the law. Even a left-leaning D.C. circuit may very well decide it can't stomach this decision and reverse it. But if it doesn't, the Supreme Court will. It's just going to take a long time. His analysis is actually quite sophomoric.
Okay, let's talk about another court case. The Supreme Court on Friday said the President of the United States is perfectly within his rights and powers to proceed with using military funds for border wall construction. Nancy Pelosi was one of the first Democrats to scream about this, saying that our founders designed this democracy governed by the people, not a monarchy, she insisted. Although to me, Joe, it kind of looks like, no, another branch of government weighed in and said he's got the power to do this. That is democracy, isn't it?
Well, Nancy Pelosi forgot that the president we had for the last 8 years before Trump was a pharaoh. Maybe not a monarch, but actually more powerful than a monarch. We had a pharaoh, Barack Obama. The bottom line here is that those nostrums from Nancy Pelosi are idiotic. This was a simple reprogramming of already appropriated funds, which the president has the authority to do under the military construction bill. This is just nonsense. This was such an easy call. Now, of course, the 4 liberals on the court couldn't stand it, which is fine. That's why we have a Supreme Court. Roberts went along, God only knows why, but we have a 5-4 reprogramming, $2.5 billion to the border, and we'll get some wall built, which is all to the good, can't hurt. Maybe it'll help. I hope it does. But Pelosi's just dead wrong, as usual.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court ruling with Trump this weekend, one of 2 victories he got on the border. Also, Guatemala agreeing to become a safe third country, which is a big deal for the president's immigration efforts. Joe, I also want to ask you about the other fight the president's having, and that's with Elijah Cummings and the Democratic Party at large in Baltimore. The president was talking about the rodent-infested state of Elijah Cummings' district. And a whole bunch of people, including in the media, are accusing the president of racism for daring to point these facts out. What do you make of this, Pat?
Well, this is the old thing. If you're a Democrat and you're black or a woman, you get to claim anything you want. Sexism, racism. The fact is, Elijah Cummings is a very powerful member of Congress who is investigating the president, his family, and his businesses. He says a lot of nasty things about the president. The president decided he was going to say something nasty about Cummings and his district. Politics ain't beanbag. Now, it's really fascinating. Bernie Sanders, in 2015, while campaigning in Baltimore, said of Baltimore, this is third world country. That's Bernie Sanders in 2015, talking about Elijah Cummings City. Then in 2018, the then mayor of Baltimore, Mayor Pugh, said, what the hell? We should just take all of this blank down. Ooh, you can smell the rats, quote unquote. That was Mayor Pugh. Then you have the new deputy police commissioner of Baltimore being held up at gunpoint in the city. You know, this is endless. This is a failed, democratically controlled city. Baltimore has been run for more than 50 years by Democrats, mostly black Democrats. And the truth is, they don't know what they're doing. They can't govern. They have a cultural disaster in the city. And all they want to do is blame somebody else for their problems. I think the president was quite justified in responding to Cummings' accusations about him and his family, and I think Cummings is justified in fighting back. These are 2 big folks. This is politics. It's what it's all about. That's why we have an election in 2020. We'll see who's going to win.
Yeah, whatever happened to that old mayor who said that the city, you could smell the rats? Whatever happened to Mayor Catherine Pugh?
She actually had to resign over a corrupt book deal.
Oh.
Over her beautiful little children's book called Heather Holly, which she was getting $500,000 from people on the State Board of Health who were large companies that were buying her books. Now, what's interesting about the fact is they bought the books but never took delivery of the books.
That's weird. It's almost like they didn't care about reading the books. All right, thank you, Joe.
You bet.